Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We are back with the Friday Ramblings. It has been just about a month since I saw you last. As I said, took myself a little bit of a breather from the Ramblings after I had done it for over 2 years without any real breaks. Just kind of had to step back and reevaluate things. Think about, why I enjoy doing this. And the good news is, we've done that. Yep. The hiatus is over. Sabbatical. The vacation, whatever you want to call it. It is over. We are back to business. We are back to rambling. And we're going to kick off with a little bit of a two-parter here. Because, frankly, I was kind of surprised that what we're going to discuss today, as the first part, I had never discussed. It was one of those things I had meant to discuss, but when I went back through my episode lists in prep for what will now be part 2, apparently I never did it. So, whoopie-woo, we're going to do it now, because you kind of need part 1 to set up part 2. And this is all going to make sense as we go along. So, I know some of you look at the titles, probably think about the titles real closely, and you got a sense of what's going to come, but let's break it down for those who just like to click videos and dive straight in without trying to anticipate what's going to be talked about. We are going to discuss, real quick, everybody in Marvel Comics, at least the mainstream continuity. We're not going to get into every single little alternate Earth one-shot. But all the major players... excuse me. Got a little excited there. Who have used the name Captain Marvel. Now again, we are only discussing the Marvel Comics versions. Yes, DC has the character Shazam, who used to go under Captain Marvel. It was originally created by Fawcett Comics. It's a whole thing. I'm sure at some point I will do a video on the Fawcett DC Marvel family. But we are focusing on Marvel's Captain Marvel legacy. And it is a legacy. This is a real quick breakdown. Bit of a preview. So, don't expect super in-depth discussion of everybody involved because, as I said, we're laying the groundwork for future episodes. That's good. That's how you do it. So, let's jump into it without any further delay. First Captain Marvel comic book printed by Marvel Comics was created by legendary writer Roy Thomas and artist Gene Colan. The original Captain Marvel is an alien military officer, Captain Mar-Vell, as in Mar-Vell, of the Kree Imperial Militia, who was originally sent to observe the planet Earth and its developing technology to travel into space. Mar-Vell eventually decides that Kree's malicious intent towards the Earth is not acceptable and allies himself with Earth, the Kree Empire branding him as a traitor. From then on, Mar-Vell fights to protect Earth from all threats. During this time, he also gains a couple human allies. He spent time with a human identity of Philip Lawson, working with the military, specifically the Air Force, where he ran into a young Air Force pilot named Carol Danvers. Carol herself would, while hanging out with the captain, after discovering exactly what he really was, and that Philip Lawson was Captain Marvel, which came about when the press misunderstood his pronunciation of his name, Captain Mar-Vell, and his alien suit to be a superhero suit, as unlike a lot of Kree that have been portrayed in various Marvel media, the good captain, Mar, to his friends, is pink-skinned. Whereas some Kree, such as the infamous Ronan the Accuser, is blue-skinned. So he was able to very easily blend in with Earthers. Of course, by pink, we mean Caucasian, like this. Not literal, like, bright Easter egg pink.
Power off.
Ignore that. That was one of my little toys. But anyway, as I said, Carol Danvers would, sorry about that sideways, but things you think about, that's why we call this the Ramblings. As I said, Carol Danvers would later gain powers highly similar to Mar-Vell's, while accompanying him on an adventure, and became his sidekick under the name Ms. Marvel. We'll get into this more later, but throwing that out there. After several adventures, though, the character of Mar-Vell would be revamped by Roy Thomas and new artist Gil Kane. Having been exiled to the negative zone by the Supreme Intelligence, Mar-Vell, who has since gained use of negabands, big old gold wrist guards that give him various energy blasting and channeling powers, he physically bonded with human Rick Jones, who had formerly been a sidekick to both the Incredible Hulk and Captain America, as well as a ally to the Avengers in general. Thus, when Rick Jones, who had his own copy of the negabands due to the physical bond, banged the bands together, him and Mar-Vell would physically switch places, with Rick Jones going to the negative zone so Mar-Vell could return to Earth. This would form the new status quo, with Rick playing not just human sidekick, like Carol had done previously, but close confidant, as their physical bond also established a bit of a mental link. They could communicate with each other through the dimensions, telepathically. And Rick helped Mar continue to gain an appreciation for humanity and all the wonderful things that humans can do when we're not busy fighting each other. This was a nod to the original Captain Marvel from DC Fawcett, where the adult Captain Marvel would, when depowering, switch to his human identity of the teenage Billy Batson. However, the title sales eventually flagged and went down. Title sales flagging. Money quit being made, basically. A little grammatical fun there. And Marvel allowed Jim Starlin to conceptually revamp the character. Mar-Vell is freed from the negative zone and becomes a cosmic champion, the protector of the universe, appointed by the cosmic entity Eon. This sets Mar against the death-worshipping Thanos, as well as various other cosmic characters. And Mar becomes a close ally of the Titans, eventually one of their numbers. Again, I'm sorry, I've only seen this word in print, so if I mispronounce this, Elysius, Elysius, Elysius becomes his lover. Along with becoming protector of the universe, Eon also gave him something called cosmic awareness, basically a limited form of omniscience, which allowed the captain to know what particular part of space he needed to go to to protect the universe, as well as help come up with solutions to defeating these varied intergalactic criminals. Fortunately, the series did reach a point of conclusion, and this led to one of the first large format graphic novels Marvel printed, The Death of Captain Marvel, which was published in 1982. I happen to own this book. It is a very good read, mostly because, unlike a lot of superheroes, Mar-Vell dies from cancer that he contracted after a fight with a villain named Nitro, in which a canister of nerve gas was busted open, exposing Mar-Vell to the nerve gas. Thus, the story, The Death of Captain Marvel, basically covers him going through what people in real life do when they have incurable terminal cancer, with, bargaining, depression, acceptance. And in the end, he dies on Titan, surrounded by various superheroes and his lover, Elysius, as well as representatives of both the Kree and Skrull, with the Kree offering him forgiveness after many years of branding him a traitor to the Kree Empire, and the Skrulls honoring him as a warrior who always fought with integrity and thus one to be respected. Honestly, he's probably going to get the longest summary out of anybody we do, because, as I said, I've read The Death of Captain Marvel. I've read a couple one-off reprints. Most of his history I have not personally read, and it's kind of a thing. As I said, we're going to blast through those real quick. It feels appropriate to give Mar a bit more spotlight in the summary, because he's the one that started it all. And you kind of have to have these plot points to understand the characters that would take up his legacy. The only thing I'm going to note real quick is that, although he was never inducted as a full member of the Avengers, due to allying with them on a few adventures and the respect that all of the Avengers had for him, Mar-Vell was made an honorary Avenger upon his death and considered a reservist in good standing, i.e. somebody they could call on when they needed his particular expertise, with the understanding that Mar would be happy to help them, which he was, because he in turn had a lot of respect for them, especially Captain America, a fellow warrior of honor, because everybody loves Steve Rogers. This idea of him being affiliated with the Avengers in a loose fashion would set up the second Captain Marvel, who was created by writer Roger Stern and artist John Romita Jr., and first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16 in 1982. This would be Monica Rambeau, a female African-American, which I'm throwing out there because there were, in the early 80s, only a handful of female African-American heroes in comic books. I mean, you had Storm with the X-Men. You had Misty Knight from the Heroes for Hire series. As far as characters appearing somewhat regularly before Monica, that was pretty much it. There may be one or two more that I'm not thinking of, because I usually associate them with later eras, because that's when I came about with them. But yeah, it was pretty thin pickings. So for Stern and Romita to go with that setup for this character, it was something that caught a lot of people's attention as a, wow, I can't believe they're doing this. And, in a good way. Good credit to them trying to bring some more representation. So yeah. But Monica Rambeau was originally a police lieutenant from New Orleans, Louisiana, who gained the power to transform herself into any form of energy. She usually preferred variants on light. This allowed her flight, energy blasting, intangibility to a limited extent. At times, her powers have kind of popped back and forth. She was given the Captain Marvel codename by the Avengers when she joined the team because they felt like her heroic ideals were similar to Mar-Vell's, and she would do his legacy a lot of good. And she was a long-standing member of the Avengers, eventually leaving to care for her father's ailing health and help him in his commercial fishing business. She would return occasionally to help out part-time, and eventually, when the third Captain Marvel appears, who we will talk about in a minute. Wait. Don't want to spoil who. But she did see the Captain Marvel name to this person, taking Photon, using that name for quite some time, until eventually passing Photon on to the same person and settling on Pulsar for a while. Later, just using her given name of Monica Rambeau, and eventually, as she mastered her powers greater and used more various forms of energy, taking the name Spectrum. She's mostly bounced between Spectrum and just plain Monica Rambeau in years since. She has been a part of various other teams, including the Mighty Avengers, and infamously the somewhat satirical Next Wave comic, which is a brilliant comic that everybody who's familiar with superheroes and some of these superhero cliches should read for. It's a good chuckle that still tells good stories to it. So, more power to you, Monica. Monica, of course, has shown up in the MCU. And we're happy to see her. Third Captain Marvel is Genus Vell, who first appears in Silver Surfer Annual number 6 in 1993, created by Ron Mars and Ron Lim, and originally used the code name of Legacy. The character is a genetically engineered son of Mar-Vell and her lover Elysius, created from the late Mar-Vell cell samples taken while he lived on Titan. He is artificially aged into late teens and given false memories of growing up with a happy childhood, being raised by his mother and uncle Eros, aka Star Fox, himself an occasional member of the Avengers. Now, we're not going to go too deep into Genus today, whenever you choose to be watching this video. But he would, later on, as we said, take on the Captain Marvel name. And pass through the hands of a few different writers, Fabian Nizia, and most infamously, Peter David, who wrote most of Genus's appearances in his self-titled book, which got stopped and restarted a few times. Genus would meet his demise in the pages of Thunderbolts, where, due to his powers being accidentally altered by occasional bad guy, occasional good guy, Baron Zemo, he, being basically immortal at this point, found himself physically separated into several pieces and banished to the Dark Force dimension, an alternate dimension that various heroes and villains have links to as part of their power set. as a way to isolate him and prevent his powers from accidentally causing the premature end of the universe, because Baron Zemo screwed with his powers. The only other major thing we're going to discuss about Genus Vel now is that most of his solo book was centered around Genus trying to carry on his father's legacy, hence his original code name, and come to terms with the fact that he basically missed the first half of his life. His childhood being, as we said before, false implanted memories, due to his mother being afraid that if he was known to exist and was still a innocent, harmless child, that Mars' old enemies would strike out at him in attempts to get some form of revenge. But in the process of trying to live up to his father's legacy, Genus would find himself doing it in various ways, not just the codename, but forming his own Banknose Bands bond with Rick Jones, and also gaining his own variant of the cosmic awareness. Genus would have a lot of struggles, which we will discuss in more details next week, because that's the second part of our episode. See, couldn't just dive into Genus, and we're doing this for a good reason, which we'll explain next week, without discussing Monica and Mar, because that was the nature of his character. It was very based on him being the third step in a legacy. However, there's still a few more to go through tonight. We're going to whip through these quickly because they themselves generally had short-run careers, at least as Captain Marvel. As we said, besides being Legacy and Captain Marvel, Genus would eventually take the name Photon, like Monica before him. However, during one of the plot points of Genus's solo series and self-titled series, Genus briefly had the power to recreate the universe, and in doing so created various anomalies, including his mother being restored to life and creating a second artificial child of her and her deceased lover Mar, a daughter named Phyla. Phyla Vel would later briefly take up the Captain Marvel legacy when Genus gave it up, feeling that he had failed to live up to his father's legacy and that it was doing him more harm than good, trying to continually do so. Phyla would later team up with various other cosmic heroes during the Annihilation event and its Annihilation Conquest follow-up, serving as one of the founding members of the modern-day Guardians of the Galaxy team, before eventually herself dying at the hands of Thanos after becoming part of the Quasar Legacy, another cosmic hero, which we'll have to discuss someday, and after dying in an unrelated situation, becoming an avatar of the cosmic entity Oblivion, she took the codename Martyr, which is the identity she was using when she died at the hands of Thanos, who is, of course, the great bringer of death to all, because he is Thanos. This leads us to... I'm going to throw this in here real quick. Eventually, Phyla was kind of sort of brought back. There was a story done in which an alternate universe was created, and temporarily, and at the end of that, that alternate version of Phyla ended up still in our reality and served with that version of the Guardians of the Galaxy, as in the modern time the Guardians of the Galaxy have had a bit of change in membership over the years. So we kind of currently have an alternate reality Philo. The original Philo who died at the hands of Thanos still has not technically been resurrected. So, there you go. Fifth Captain Marvel is the Skrull sleeper agent Connor, KHN''NR, who first appeared in Civil War The Return on the epilogues to the original Marvel Civil War event. Connor is as I said, Skrull sleeper agent who is claimed to be the original Captain Marvel, Marvel, having fallen through a time portal shortly before his contracting cancer, and played hero for a short while before his sleeper status was activated. Unfortunately, because of the brainwashing he went through to be a perfect sleeper agent and impersonate the original Captain Marvel, Connor's original Skrull personality was not actually able to reassert itself, and he, during the Secret Invasion event, in which the Skrulls tried to take over the Earth, actually fought against them before dying in battle. However, his death in battle was witnessed by a Kree from an alternate reality who had been living on Earth for a while under the name Marvel Boy. The young gentleman known as Novar, who would later take up the alias Captain Marvel at Connor's request, and was convinced by current head of the government-approved superhero community, this being part of the whole Civil War thing, Norman Osborn and his team of Dark Avengers. However, when Novar realized that he was the only member of the Dark Avengers that actually wanted to be a good hero, that the others were unrepentant villains, Novar left the team, and after encountering the current Supreme Intelligence and getting his own duplicate versions of the Nega Bands, took the codename Protector. Novar would eventually give up trying to be Protector of the Universe and go back to being just Marvel Boy, where he would work with later versions of the Young Avengers and eventually the Inhuman Royal Family. So he's still alive and sticking around, but no longer a Captain Marvel. This, of course, cleared the deck for the current Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers. Yep, our old friend Ms. Marvel, who also spent some time as Binary and Warbird, as well as just being Carol Danvers. After the House of M event rewrote reality, in which she was Captain Marvel and one of the Earth's premier heroes, when reality was restored to its proper alignment, she had some brief lingering memories of that time, and after a pep talk from Captain America, she was encouraged to take up the identity and, like she did in the House of M, live up to her full potential as a hero, which she has been doing for several years now. Actually, 2012, so for the past 10 years. And it is in many ways a brilliant speech by the Captain America. You know, him encouraging Carol, hey, don't go back to being Ms. Marvel, move forward. You should be Captain Marvel. And her going, hey, no, Captain Marvel was Marvel. He's a man I had a lot of respect for. That's who Captain Marvel is. And Captain America cut her off and said, no, look, you listen to me. You are literally an Air Force captain. You have the right to use the name Captain. Just like I am Captain America and have the military rank of captain. You are a captain. You are a Marvel. Your first heroic mentor was Marvel. You are not replacing him. You're not trying to make the world forget him. You are carrying the name forward. You earned this more than once, Carol. Take it. Because you are the only one that should at this point. Not perfect quote, but that was the basic gist. And it worked. Carol has been a great hero in her own right, becoming a leader of the superhero community, and herself passing on the Ms. Marvel identity to young Kamala Khan, who has done great things with the identity, including forming her own team of young heroes known as the Champions. So, there you go. A little bit of sub-legacy there with the Ms. Marvel name. Real quick, there was an Ultimate Marvel equivalent of Marvel, whose full name was Jaehaerys Halasan Mar-Vehl, M-A-H-R space V-E-H-L, who also assumed the identity of Dr. Philip Lawson while on Earth. He is Kree. Little bit of a tweaked origin due to the fact the Ultimate Marvel had a different continuity. But it's all the same basic gist in the end. Besides that, as I said, we saw a variant of Carol Danvers in House of M. Various other one-shots. The only other major one that I'm going to throw out is the Cancerverse version of Mar. Cancerverse was an alternate dimension shown in the Thanos Imperative crossover that kind of ended the big cosmic era that we had in the modern time that began with Annihilation, because it went like Annihilation Conquest, War of the Kings, and there was some sub-events kind of mixed in as part of the ongoing Guardians of the Galaxy and Nova books, with the Thanos Imperative kind of ending it all, in which Cancerverse, which was called as such because, like cancer is uncontrolled mutated cellular growth, the Cancerverse was a dimension in which death as a concept had been eradicated, and thus life was everywhere. It grew uncontrollably. It literally filled all the space in that realm. Thus, it was trying to seek out other realms to bleed into. This was all led by Cthulhu-esque beings known as the Many-Angled Ones. Their prime mortal agent was Mar-Vehl, who had made a demonic deal with them to survive his cancer and became Lord Marvel. Evil. He would meet his demise during the Thanos Imperative event, along with most of the Many-Angled Ones, because they crossed the path of Thanos. And that pretty much wraps things up for us. As I said, in the MCU, Carol Danvers is the main Captain Marvel. There was a reference to Mar and his human identity of Dr. Lawson. Although this time Lawson was a female. But that's okay. That's what alternate realities and origin takes are for. So good times. But, as I said, next week we're going to go much more in-depth on Genus, who, frankly, is my favorite version of Captain Marvel. I mean, Carol's gotten the most kind of main event level push. But I think that Genus, mostly because his story did end for many years, had a great story. Peter David, who has written the majority of Genus's appearances, did a wonderful job with showing that it's not all flowers and sunshine, taking up somebody else's legacy, especially when you are their literal child and it is part of your inheritance. But we are going to discuss that next week. We may go into bigger detail of some of the others. I don't know if I ever, managed to get a hold of some of the old Mar solo issues. We're definitely going to spend some more time with Marvel Cosmics. Adam Warlock's an incredibly interesting character, but very convoluted. So is the Silver Surfer, along with his Galactus and the other Heralds. We might just do a rundown of kind of Galactus as a concept and his various Heralds. But, you know what? As I said, it's all part of the future. Hopefully we can go another 2+ years before I need another break to let my brain recharge. But we got May full of ramblings. Going to hit up a few different things. And as always, if you have any suggestions for anything you'd like me to discuss, feel free to throw them out at me. But remember, here at the Ramblings, we may give constructive criticism, but we do not rant, we do not rage, we do not hate. We look at the silver lining in our entertainment, sometimes flat out just big happy sunshine. Because we all need a little positivity, and we all need a reminder that, hey, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with enjoying your entertainment. That's what it's for. Still, for now, I'm going to sign out. I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of your day or evening or whenever you watch this. Still, remember to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Especially subscription. Hit that notification bell so every time a Rambling or any of the other great shows we have at Roulette Productions drops, you will know as soon as possible. See you in 7, folks.